Let us summarize our thoughts about privacy in the new world, which is characterized by the possibilities that's provided by the digital technologies. We leave digital traces. This is what we saw in all the contributions in that week. We leave digital traces as soon as we are using digital services, digital instruments. So we leave traces, for example, with our movement data. So mobile tracking, otherwise the services will not work that help us, for example, to show our route when we are walking or driving. The Wi-Fi data, the fitness trackers with GPS connections, the RFID, all such devices produce movement data which tell where we are in which moment. Shopping leaves a lot of digital traces. The bonus systems which are offered there, the various cards, credit cards, other cards, price comparison portals that are visited by the people. All this data tell something what we are doing, for what we spend our money, what articles are of interest. Also, when we do some activity and in the health area, a lot of data were produced and can be collected. For example, the usage of these fitness trackers, the usage of smart watches, pedometers in the smartphone. They tell a lot about our health, about our fitness, about about our activities, what we are doing and how we are feeling, and what the data are, what kind of data are collected in that moment we are doing some activity. Our files, our emails tell a lot about ourselves, and all these files and emails are stored in various cloud systems, are stored in the email system, and who gets access to this can get a lot of data about us. But this is not enough. We leave digital traces also when we communicate with our friends. This is a very big and large data producing thing, the usage of social networks. Email providers I already mentioned, the voice over IP services like from Skype and others. The synchronization of contact data in our smartphones. Synchronization means the data are stored in the cloud so that they can be backed and others. So when we think on the area of smart homes, then the presence and the activities in such a smart home gives a lot of information about us. The smart home devices, the smart home meters, smart TVs and others. But also if we use browser, and then a lot can be found out about our interests, how we use the internet, what we are interested in, what kind of services we are interested. Search engines, Facebook, Twitter and other elements on web pages. Data retention. All this gives and tells something about us in very fine-grained details. So the question is, what is critical? The question is that many of this collected data, of course, is necessary. Otherwise, the service could not be offered. The operation of the various service could not done. And the users like the service. They load the service to their smartphone, for example, to count the number of steps to see whether they have enough movement. So many of the collected data need to be produced and need to be available to the service provider. Otherwise, a service provider could not offer the service. So mobile tracking is an essential feature for any mobile network. if the mobile network does not know where I am, then they cannot connect me to another, cannot connect a telephone call to another person. The storage of customer and transaction data for cashless payments are necessary, of course, for security reasons. The cloud service facilitate backup and restore data, as well as collaborate over the internet, and this needs that they have access to certain data. Social networks enable us to communicate in a very convenient way with friends, but they produce a lot of data. And the problem is that often the privacy violation becomes a problem through a correlation of that data. To a correlation of the data from different sources. So for example, an employer knows the salary of a person and knows his address, his personal address, and has a lot of information about employee. A travel agent knows that a person goes away for a weekend trip. And the bank or the online store know that there is purchased a valuable asset. And if all this information come same time into a hand of a gang of data thieves, then they have access to all this information. Then they know that your home with this attractive asset is nobody there at that weekend where the owner are traveling. So correlating these different things gives information, for example, for a break-in and try to steal this asset. Or another example for such kind of correlation. A pensioner has recently paid for several hospital stays by means of his EC card from the bank. Now the pensioner wants to apply for a credit loan from the bank with a 10-year maturity. You can imagine if the bank has access to the data and considers this application, then probably they will not be willing to give such a credit loan. So the data and the knowledge of the data gives people that have access to this data a lot of power, a lot of decision power, which has immediate impact on the personal life. There are some central data collection points. So the question who has the possibility and who is able and who has the power and the computing power that's necessary and who has access to the data to correlate personal data. Of course, the large IT companies have this possibility and they have the ability. IT companies like Google, like Microsoft, like Apple. For example, Google has access to the search queries when people are using the Google search machine. Google has access to all data on Android phones because of this synchronization, because of the apps that are offered and others. Google has access to watched and favorite videos because Google has complete access to YouTube. Google has access to the information which are sent via email from all the people that are using Gmail platform. Google has data from Google Maps, so Google knows where people are going. All this data are in the hand of one company. This is not only Google, also the other big providers, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple, have a lot of access of different data sources. So to complete this data from Google Drive, cloud storage, for example, Google Docs, all this is what Google knows from the people which use that services. And if you see the amount of service that's provided, then and compare what you are using, then you see there are different data sources that are available to the people inside Google. Also, internet and telecommunication providers have access to a lot of data. Providers need to have this access to connect you to the internet. And all the data you receive from the data, all the data you send via the data, may be accessed by the internet and telecom providers. Also, state actors like secret services and police have access to a lot of data. They can request or they can monitor data from multiple locations, for example, from banks, from internet providers, mobile network providers. It depends a little bit from the legal situations in different states. Sometimes they have more possibilities to access this data. Sometimes these data are more restricted. For example, in Germany, they are relatively large restriction for that secret services and police situation. In US, the US intelligence service like NSA or CIA and secret services from all the partners of US in UK and Australia, they have the possibility to collect a large amount of data. A large amount of data like Visa data, MasterCard data, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, and many of the large internet service companies which were active and developed and promoted in the US, because in case of danger, in case of investigating a criminal act, the legislative allows the US intelligence service or the US FBI to access such data. There is a big program, I mentioned this in some of the videos, the PRISM program, which became known, from which the activities became known by the Snowden whistleblower. And also it became known that with there is an organization, there's a cooperation with the German intelligence agency, the X-Keyscore program. So what to conclude? The conclusion is the correlation of actually non-confidential data can lead to a violation of privacy. All this data we mentioned, or many of this data we mentioned, are publicly available. But if one brings them together and if one correlates them, then a violation of privacy can be the result. So often it's not clear which data is relevant for privacy protection. This is a big problem. And so one advice is to minimize data from you, data about you, wherever possible. Only share and give out the data that are really required for the usage of a special service or for the usage of a specific operation. A responsible user must seek personal compromise. Personal compromise between payment of usage by modern technology, by giving, and the payment is giving personal data, and protecting his or her privacy. So data is a new gold, is a new currency to pay, services to pay operations. But you have to be clear and you have to decide whether you want to use the service, thinking that in order to use the service, you have to provide private data. Then it is a big problem. A lot of data is collected and stored not only nationally, for example, banks, EC card providers, police, secret services, but also by companies and intelligence agencies in third-party countries. And the problem is concerning privacy, there are very big differences in the legal frame in the different countries. So the different nations offer different national legislation in the point of data protection. In some countries there are very strong regulations, in other countries are weak regulations for data protection, and the internet is a global network, so it's very simple to place a certain service, to locate certain service in nations with a low regulation of data protection. So it is one of the sense of our whole course to give you the information you need to make decisions, whether it makes sense to use a service, whether that you know the price for that service, the price are the data you are spending, so you can make your decisions. Is it worth to use the service, giving my data for that? So we hope that this kind of digital enlightenment will help you in future to take care and to be able to protect your privacy as much as you like, in the same way to make use of the potentials of the new digital world.